Maybe you've wondered why Bitcoin isn't at $500,000 per Bitcoin yet. Well, then listen up, because the bond market is on the verge of collapse, and when that happens, Bitcoin will skyrocket. Jamie Dimon, the boss of JP Morgan, even admits himself that this is coming. He says that a crack will appear in the bond market. That's just going to happen, and he's already warning his regulators, you will panic, but I won't.
We borrowed and spent $10 trillion from 2020 to today. Okay? Thought of that. And you heard the numbers before. We also bought 4 trillion of your securities. On top of the 4 trillion we bought in the first go round, those numbers are true globally, not quite as big as ours, but our QE was 8 trillion and the QE of the rest of the world was another 8 trillion or something like that. We're talking about huge sums of money. We don't really know the full effect of that. And, the bond dealers, which Gary mentioned, inventories are much smaller than they used to be, partly because of rules and regulations. And you are going to see a crack in the bond market. Okay? It is going to happen. And I tell this to my regulators, some of whom are in this room. I'm telling you it's going to happen and you're going to panic. I'm not going to panic. We'll be fine.
And every time a crack appears, the US central bank steps in. That means they print money, inject money into the market, and bail out the banks. But this time, it's not just the banks that are being bailed out, but also the people who bet on this crash with Bitcoin, or who bet on a crash in Bitcoin. That's probably why Michael Saylor thinks that $13 million per Bitcoin might even be too little. One thing is certain, the last few months have been really crazy for Bitcoin. Everything is fitting together perfectly right now. The US government has recognized Bitcoin as the only digital commodity. Banks are now officially allowed to use it, and accountants have switched to a new fair accounting standard in the US. There are more and more companies putting Bitcoin into their treasuries. Over 100 public companies already hold it on their balance sheets, and every week there's a new report that more companies are doing the same. Saylor believes that Bitcoin will grow by 29% every year for the next 21 years. That would bring the price to $13 million per Bitcoin by 2045. But now he's even more optimistic and says 30% per year for the next 20 years? Basically, Bitcoin outperforms everything twice as strong as the big tech stocks, 4 times better than the S&P 500, 8 times better than real estate, while bonds have even lost 4%. And then there's the buyback situation in the US. The US Treasury just bought back $10 billion of its own bonds. The largest buyback that has ever happened, and that's no coincidence. That's pure panic. The yield on 30-year Treasury bonds has climbed above 5%, the second highest level since 2008, and the market is freaking out. The US Treasury Secretary even had to publicly state that the US will never go bankrupt, but if you have to emphasize that, it already sounds like trouble. Japan's 30-year yield has reached 3% for the first time, and from Germany to Canada, bond markets are flashing red. Why? Because real inflation isn't going away, deficits aren't getting smaller, and the US central bank is completely stuck. And that's what's called fiscal dominance. The markets are currently outpacing the central banks. Bitcoin already senses the chaos, and you can't steal or spend your way out of $35 to $37 trillion in debt. The only solution is to slowly devalue the money until, at some point, it gets out of control. The Trump team has understood this. There are efforts in the background to make a strategic Bitcoin reserve an official US policy. Trump himself says he will soon replace the head of the central bank, and you know what that means? The money printing machine will be fired up, money will be created out of thin air. Last week, there were 42 new Bitcoin updates at companies. 16 companies have added Bitcoin to their balance sheets, and one company, the Japanese firm Metaplanet, plans to buy a total of 21,000 Bitcoin by 2027. Everything is happening all at once right now, and Michael Saylor says we should buckle up because $13 million per Bitcoin is possible. And Hal Finney, a Bitcoin pioneer, even spoke of $10 million per Bitcoin.
We all thought that $10,000 was a pipe dream and never going to happen, right? So I think Hal Finney was just like, a decade ahead of his time in terms of thinking that this could actually happen, right? So I think, because if everyone was 100% convinced that it's going there, it would already be there, right? And so there has to be doubt about, the pace of adoption, how much more money is coming in, and what the actual addressable market is. We don't fully know. I mean, I think Hal Finney's estimate is reasonable because even today, the reason he made it still holds there is a lot of monetary premium where people are trying to protect themselves from inflation and save by, buying real estate. In some cases, they're not even using it. It's just vacant. But, there's a lot of that in New York and China and different places, right? And that is not a great thing because it makes housing less affordable. And if there were, a financial product or monetary instrument that did that for you, it would make housing more affordable. So it would improve, the cost of housing, access to housing, and the quality of housing you can afford on a budget. So those would all be good things. And there are other things with a monetary premium or where people are trying to protect against reflation, like in the bond market. Some more esoteric things like art and wine. where people use those as a kind of novel way to protect against inflation. And if you add all that stuff up, 200 trillion is possibly a conservative estimate at this point because we've had a lot of inflation.
Sounds crazy, but it basically makes sense. And many people buy real estate as a hedge against inflation, even if it remains unused. That drives prices up, housing becomes more expensive, and a financial product like Bitcoin could change that and make housing more affordable. And there are even more places where people can and want to protect their money. Bonds, art, wine oil for preserving value. The Uber CEO calls Bitcoin a proven store of value. Airbnb and other companies also want to buy Bitcoin and add it to their balance sheets. The former head of PayPal even believes that Bitcoin will process trillions in transactions daily. He says the old financial system is broken. We need something new, money that moves in real time, worldwide, for everyone. And some people who might want to invest in Bitcoin are afraid of quantum computers and are still hesitant to invest there because they think these could crack Bitcoin. But Saylor says that's just talk from people who want to sell you the next quantum token. Big companies like Google or Microsoft won't build quantum computers that essentially destroy cryptography because that would also harm themselves. And Bitcoin is prepared for that. It's like a protocol similar to the English language or the decimal system in mathematics. If these computers break your calculator or your messaging app, you don't just learn a new language or a new number system. You simply update your software. It's the same with Bitcoin. The software and hardware are constantly being improved and updated to stay secure. And you might think someone could hack your Bitcoins, but honestly, it's much more likely that someone could trick you with a phishing email. Such an email might say that a quantum computer is threatening your Bitcoin. Click here to secure them, and that's how they could end up getting your Bitcoin. And if we now take a look at the economy, the US economy, there's a huge budget deficit in the United States that's getting bigger and bigger. The interest payments on the national debt are already higher than the budget for US defense. And that's a real warning sign. If things keep going this way, eventually there won't be any money left for other things because everything will go toward paying off the debt. Bitcoin could be a kind of rescue here, or even the rescue. A sort of hedge against such problems. Basically, it's digital money. And just imagine if your money could double every 18 months, like it does for some companies that hold Bitcoin in their cash reserves on their balance sheets. And many say Bitcoin is the future, an opportunity for everyone. It could give you the freedom to keep your money without it constantly losing value. Unlike a social credit system controlled by artificial intelligence, where you have to collect points, and Bitcoin here is like an escape from such a future. The world is changing right now. The old monetary system is shaking, and Bitcoin could be the new way forward. So think about it. It could be worth it for you. And if you want to build financial independence through crypto and Bitcoin, click the link in the description below the video. Watch the video, and now imagine you owe someone a huge amount of money. Let's say $35 to $37 trillion. How would you ever be able to pay that back? In the normal world, you have two options. Either you pay it back or you say you can't and just leave it. But the US government has a trick up its sleeve now, and they can simply print more money. And that's possible because of the central bank. The problem with this, however, is that the dollar loses value due to unlimited printing. And what does it lose value against? Against things like Bitcoin and gold, for example. And to eliminate the US trade deficit, a historic decline of the dollar is needed. That means the dollar has to become weaker, specifically against assets like Bitcoin. And interestingly, Trump did not impose tariffs on Bitcoin or even prevent the strategic reserve for Bitcoin. This suggests that Bitcoin is being seen as an important asset. And Joe Rogan, a well-known podcaster in the US, even believes that Bitcoin has the potential to become a globally accepted currency. And Michael Saylor, an entrepreneur who has invested heavily in Bitcoin, even believes that the value of Bitcoin will increase by an average of 30% per year. And what that means for you, if you're interested in Bitcoin, it's important that you also store it securely. If you want to know more about this, click on the link in the description below the video. Don't leave your Bitcoin, don't leave your crypto on exchanges. Learn how to manage it yourself. For example, by running your own node. This gives you more control and also more security. And interestingly, there are also political movements heading in this direction. An advisor to Donald Trump has said that they plan to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible, and that shows how seriously the topic is being taken. He even said that there are so many cool opportunities they can take advantage of, whether it's through Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin bonds, or even taxes in Bitcoin in order to get more Bitcoin. And it's not just that there's only one single way to do this. There are countless ways, and that's really exciting. Our democratic counterparts certainly recognize that we have to harness this asset class for the American people, and there are definitely going to be countries overseas that are racing to accumulate as much as they can. And I've had this question asked to me repeatedly by journalists, like, how much do you want? I'm like, it's the silliest question of all time. And lo and behold, I get asked that question. I asked you that. No, I mean, I will say very clearly, we want as much Bitcoin as we can possibly get. We have to do this in budget-neutral ways that don't cost the taxpayer a dime, but there are countless ways in which we can do it. And if you read the fine print of the executive order, it kicks these innovative ideas over to Commerce and Treasury to come up with, but we flesh these out among our working group actors. We will move expeditiously on those that can be quickly implemented, but it's not one size fits all. It's not like we have to do this in one singular format. There can be hundreds of different ways we do this, if not thousands. And so we talked about this in different verticals, whether it be through mining activity, whether it be through bit bonds. I mean, there are tons of creative things like that.
Taxes, Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, it's endless. And so people ask me to give clear examples. And the reason I don't want to tell you what we're going to do first yet is because I really don't want to poison the well. We want to do something that's going to be the most effective for the United States. And so when we're ready to announce that, which I'm sure we will be in short order, I think that this community will be extremely pleased. And that means get ready now because the train is just leaving the station. And for you, that means take action and don't just wait around.